Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order our Gen Gov meeting. I guess we'll just do attendance. Mr. Clerk, if you will.
All right. Chair Brayback.
Here.
Representatives Hood. Puri.
Here.
O'Neill.
Present.
Steckloff. Menser.
Here.
Minority Vice Chair Boland.
Here.
Representatives Leitner.
Here.
Kuhn.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Rep. O'Neill moves to excuse absent members without any objection. All absent members are excused. And Rep. Kuhn moves to approve the minutes from the previous minutes, the minutes from the previous meeting without any objections. The minutes are approved. Today, we have our amazing Attorney General here with us and her team, and we get to hear all about the incredible work that they do throughout our state protecting the residents here, and so excited about her leadership and grateful for her and her team, and I'm excited to welcome up our AG, Dana Nessel, and her team. Thanks for being here with us this morning. And folks, this is our only presentation because we wanted to leave space and room for our AG and her team, and so we have some time here.
Well, great, because I'm very long-winded, as you all know. So it is just an honor and a privilege to be here today to talk to you about the budget for the Michigan Department of Attorney General, and oh, that's where I put my pens. And to talk about the great work that we're doing at the department. And I also want to introduce everybody to our staff. We've had a few changes. You guys, many of you, probably most of you know Ashley Steffen, who is my, not new anymore, Director of Legislative Affairs. So if you have any questions or if you really hate something that we're doing, she's the person that you should light up. And I want to introduce you to other folks who are here too. I have our head of finance, Ron Foss, back there, if you want to wave. I have all of my my chiefs over here. I have my deputies, Joe Pochin and Peter Manning, and then my head of criminal, which is Daniel Hageman Clark. Who am I missing? Anybody? You got just about everybody. Okay. So if there's anything that I can't answer, trust me, I got the people here who can answer those questions. So very excited to review some of this with you, and I know obviously you've received the recommendations from the governor, and just want to say, no, let's see, move on. Who can read that, Ashley? Even if I was like 20, I couldn't read that.
This is talking about what you do as
Oh,
Attorney
what
General,
I do.
so
what
I think
do.
you know that.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
So just to review, she's making it challenging for me, and it's fun because you know what I mean. It just it's always fun. All right. So just a little bit about the work that we do at the department, and I know that you guys all know this, but I just want to review it just because I think a lot of times people aren't 100% sure about what we do, and obviously, you know. I am a constitutional officer. Theoretically, if the first 3 constitutional officers are all out of state, I get to be governor. Somehow that never happens, and I think it's a plan that they have based on some pranks that they know that I was going to try out. But I am the 4th constitutional officer. It is the job of the Department of Attorney General. We represent, you know, the governor and the secretary and all the agencies and the commissions. And obviously you know that we also have the ability to issue AG opinions when they are requested by the legislature or by our client agencies, and that those opinions are binding on state agencies and state government. So we have multiple divisions in the office. We have 2 civil bureaus and 1 criminal bureau. And moving on to our next case, our next slide, we have right now about 48,000 cases that we are handling currently at the department. Now, that doesn't include our active investigations that we haven't filed litigation on or prosecutions on yet. It also doesn't include all of our expungements that we're processing, and we have a special unit that does nothing but process expungements and also goes all over the state to have expungement fairs. And we've worked really hard to have experts in this area who can, work to ensure that the process runs as smoothly as possible, and we have to coordinate with all the courts around the state in regard to that. And that also, these numbers don't include all of our client-level advice and all the trainings that we do all over the state, which are many. So what is the Department of Attorney General composed of? Well, it's mostly people as opposed to programming costs. We have our AAGs, our legal assistants, our investigators, many victim advocates, clerical personnel, and our paralegals. And just so it's sort of understood the great bargain that you get. First of all, I would put my lawyers and investigators and support staff against anybody in the private sector any day of the week. I'm very proud of the work they do, and we have such great subject matter expertise. But it also saves a lot of money for the state. So, for instance, if you were to get private attorneys to handle legal matters on behalf of the state, it would cost four or five times more than what our AAGs get paid. I try not to tell them that because I don't want them to leave for the private sector. But we're getting good legal advice at basement bargain rates. And I hope it's because, I hope folks stay because they love the work that we do at the department. But it is sometimes a challenge to keep them knowing that they can make so much more elsewhere. In terms of the budgetary impact to the state, we are just a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of the overall expenses. So that's 1/3 of 1% of the state general fund budget. And our operational appropriations for fiscal year 2023 was about $108,000. But what I think is so exciting about the work that we do is we don't cost the state money, we make the state money. And what do I mean by that? Well, because of the lawsuits that we file on behalf of the state and on behalf of individual consumers, last year we brought in $425 million in awards via our settlements and judgments. So, for every dollar that you spend on our department, the state gets $4 back. In terms of our initiatives, we got a lot of them. I think sometimes my staff, when I say, you guys, I got a great new idea, and then everyone runs away. Because we have a lot of initiatives that we've put into place since I took office in 2019. But, I would argue these are incredibly important initiatives and popular as well. And, we're doing some great work. And so that's just sort of a snapshot of all the special initiatives over and beyond the work that is mandated by statute. And these are just a few of the things that we've been doing. I created in 2019 a conviction integrity unit, and that's to address, we might have the best legal system in the world, but it ain't perfect. And, we believe that as important as it is to convict the guilty, it's equally as important to exonerate those where new evidence arises to suggest that that person is innocent of the crime for which they were convicted. And so it's not just the 6 folks that were exonerated who are serving life sentences since we began this, but we've reviewed and we've closed 900 cases. And what does that mean for those 900 cases? That means we double, triple checked and made sure that there was sufficient evidence to prove guilt for those individuals. And I would argue that's just as important, right? To ensure that for people who say, well, I contend that I'm innocent of this offense. Well, we review those. And so to me, the 900 cases that we closed and said we think there is compelling evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that this individual, this prisoner, is guilty of the offense that they were convicted of, that's just as important, so that people know, like, yeah, I guess the system really does work. And in the cases where we have evidence to show that the system didn't work, that we ensure that those people are no longer serving these life sentences. And so we're really proud of that. We have 850 open files right now. The address confidentiality program. We are so proud of this. As you know, I don't know if any of you were around to have worked on this legislatively, but it took like, I think, 3 years to get this ready. It turned out to be a lot more complex than we thought it was going to be. But we were able to get it kicked off in September. And this is such a life-saving program. It's for individuals who, have been victims of human trafficking and stalking and sexual assault and domestic violence, who need to start over and who need to know that their assailants cannot find them and locate them. And this is a program that already existed in 40 other states. So we wanted to make sure that we were really putting together a program with best practices from those other 40 states so that we could best protect people. And I think you can understand that, we don't want a situation where just because a person involves themselves in state government to the extent that they are registering to vote, getting a driver's license or ID, enrolling their children in school, applying for state assistance if they're eligible. We don't want that to be the triggering mechanism that allows an abuser or an assailant to locate them. And so this system is working so well. I'm so, so proud of the work of our department. We already have 121 individuals who have enrolled in that program just since September. I think that number is going to go up a lot. I go all over the state, as does our ACP coordinator, sharing this program because a lot of people still don't know about it. And I know Rep. Mentzer, I think we were at a DV shelter in your district talking to people, and I mean, a lot of people still don't know that this program exists. So a lot of it is just educating people and letting them know that, during that time period, for instance, when you have somebody who might have been convicted of a very serious offense against an individual, and while they are perhaps serving their time, this gives that person an opportunity to move and to still register for everything, but to know that their address is not going to be made public, not by the state anyway, and that they can receive their mail, and they can vote, and they can do all those things without having an individual who they're very afraid of find out what their location is. And so we think that program is going really, really well. We really urge everybody to please let your constituents know that this program exists for people who want to enroll in it. Do we have another one of these that has, because this is my old one. Do you know where the other one is?
I handed you the color one.
Okay. All right. Okay, our organized retail crime unit that we started last year. I am so proud of this unit. We have done so much great work, and our staffers, they just hit the ground running and haven't looked back. So just since April of 2023, remember, we have over $1 billion in retail fraud in, whether they're small businesses, whether they're big box retail stores, significant losses. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that businesses have to close. That's bad for the business, but it's also bad for people who live in that area that now don't have that store to go to anymore. And it also increases the price for consumers of everyday household goods that people need. And so some of these operations, we're not talking about somebody who's like, picking up, some deodorant here or there and swiping. We're talking about massive operations. These are criminal syndicates. And so 31 investigations, 41 defendants charged, 30 prosecutions, and over $2 million in cash seized just since April. And we have charged an array of cases. We have many of them that are listed there. You might, I'm looking around, who represents Oakland County over here? Okay, all right. So, I mean, do you guys remember those home invasions that were just like a daily event? We're prosecuting those folks, and guess what? After we issued charges, those home invasions stopped. So I would argue that's a good thing. But we work together with a special force task force. So we have our special agents. We work with MSP. We work with FBI. We work with the Postal Service, who plays a key role, and we work with sheriffs all over the state and also local law enforcement. And we are making a significant difference. And what we're really excited about is that this particular unit will be self-funded eventually because of the criminal forfeiture laws. Again, they steal a lot of money, and we want to make sure, obviously, that these businesses are reimbursed. We want to make sure that consumers are reimbursed because sometimes this involves their money too. We want to make sure that this is an ongoing operation of the Department of Attorney General. By the way, I'm really proud we have the first established, dedicated ORC unit of any state AG office, and now we get calls all the time from all over the country about, like, how did you guys do that? So I'm really proud of the work of our staff, and great thanks to our bureau chief, Daniel Hageman Clark, who worked so hard to put this together, but it's really working. And I will say that beyond all the money, like the Lululemon and Ulta cases, I mean, these were all smash and grab cases. Those are scary. I mean, when I'm going in to get my yoga pants, the last thing I want to worry about is, being violently attacked. Those are scary. I don't know if you guys have seen those on TV, but you know where I know that you barely seen them? In Michigan, because of this task force, because people know that we're operating, people know that there are going to be serious penalties for it, and so we have literally seen cases where it's clear to us that these criminal enterprises are like, how about we skip Michigan? Because we know that they're onto us. And I think, that's a good thing for us. So I'm very excited about that unit. Our job court pilot program is ongoing. This is, and I talked to you guys about this last year and the year before. Pilot program is in Genesee, Marquette, and Wayne counties. We're super excited about this. So just roughly, in order to incarcerate a person in this state, whether we're talking about county jail or MDOC, roughly $38,000 a year, give or take, depending on the services that are required. Our job court program is approximately $5,000 per person. Well, why does that matter? Not just because of the cost saving, but because with most of these people, and we'll see when the pilot is over how this goes, but I think these are people that are never going to re-enter the criminal justice system again. So it's not just that we're not going to have to pay any money for them, but they're going to start paying taxes and child support and being just generally good citizens that are productive members of their community. Like I said, the program is growing great so far. Our first graduations are going to be this fall. So far we've had, in terms of our dropout rate, we've had a couple people drop out, and we had one person unfortunately pass away. But everybody else has stayed in the program. And I think it really goes to show that for a lot of people who are in the criminal justice system, with the right help and assistance and wraparound services that we're providing, they don't have to stay in the criminal justice system. And as I like to say to my job court participants, I hope when this program is over to never see you again. But in the nicest way possible, I say that. So we think it's going to be wildly successful. We're starting to include some folks from some neighboring counties because we've had so many prosecutors reach out to us and say, hey, I have a candidate that I think would be great. Could you, even though it's another county, could you take this person in? And we've been trying to be amenable to that. And of course, my goal was one day I would love to see this program in all 83 counties because I think it's going to be so phenomenally successful. Missing, murdered, and indigenous people. This is a new task force, an initiative that we set up, and we're sort of using the framework of our clergy abuse investigations, which the most successful investigations of any of the clergy abuse investigations throughout all 50 states, hands down. I don't say, I mean, not to pat me on the back, I'm patting Danielle Hagman-Clark on the back because she was in charge of that. But in terms of the number of cases that were investigated and the number of defendants that were charged and the number of convictions, but also just the number of cases closed. So we want to do the same thing when it comes to missing, murdered Indigenous people. And, you know, if you read a little bit about this, or if you talk to anybody in the tribal community who are working, you know, hand in hand on all of this with, you know, what's worse than when you have a family member that turns up missing, or God forbid, dead, and you just never ever know what happened to that person. It is so devastating to that family, and it is so devastating to their entire community. And we have really just an untold number of individuals from the tribal community where this has had a devastating impact. So we're putting this together, and we are working with a number of different, not just the tribes, of course, but a number of different folks in law enforcement, and we're putting this together. We're right now having the discussions to put together the best possible task force in order to combat this and to begin investigating these cases. And just, you know, for just a few facts around this, the National Center for Disease Control and Prevention reports that homicide is the 6th leading cause of death for Indigenous women and girls, and the 3rd leading cause of death for Indigenous men. And a recent study that we saw actually is that Native American women are murdered at a rate 10 times the national average, which is just terrifying. So, you know, we're very excited. We've been so successful when it comes to our cold case sexual assault investigations and prosecutions, and we hope to bring that level of expertise to this particular initiative as well. Again, working with the tribes in full partnership, and really focusing on things like intimate partner violence and domestic and sexual violence, stalking, homicides, and really working at a trauma-informed way where we're culturally honoring, you know, these individuals and you know, finding the best possible way forward to investigate and prosecute these cases. So I expect this to be a very successful initiative, and you know, I'm proud of our office for moving forward on this. Our law enforcement accreditation program. Okay, I'm just doing a little bit more bragging about my department, but we just were formally accredited, and this is a really big deal. It's a huge undertaking for any law enforcement agency to achieve accreditation. Our department has 64 special agents. They're all sworn MCOLS law enforcement officers with statewide law enforcement authority. And, you know, so far, out of the 577 law enforcement agencies around the state, 77 agencies have achieved full accreditation from the Michigan Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. And there's about 100 that are undergoing the process, but we are the first state agency to be accredited. And you know, why does this matter? Why is it important? Well, really, this is just ensuring that our department is following the very, very, very best practices and procedures. And what does that do? Well, several things. One, it ensures that we develop really good relationships with the communities around the state that we serve, but also it saves money. Whenever you have a law enforcement agency that has gone through this very, again, difficult process, time-consuming process, and you are giving them the very, very, very best, greatest and latest training on everything, frankly, you save money on lawsuits, and also when there are lawsuits, you tend to win those lawsuits because you can say, we employed the best practices and procedures. That's what we do at the Department of Attorney General. And it really makes for a significant difference. I know you guys aren't looking for recommendations from me, but I really highly recommend, to the extent that we can urge every law enforcement agency in the state to go through the accreditation process. I know that what happens a lot of times is when you're talking about anything involving police reforms, it's like sort of a one-off. You know, what if we change foot pursuit policy, or what if we change or have specific use of force policy and things of that nature? Well, accreditation is everything. It's all of the very best policies, including things that you don't think about, like maintaining a good evidence room where it's safe and secure and you can find stuff. I don't, like, no offense to any of my predecessors, but when we got in there and we looked at the evidence room, I mean, Jimmy Hoffa could have been in the corner somewhere and nobody would know because of just the stuff that had been stuck in there and left in there forever. And that's not the way to maintain an evidence room, to make sure that not only are you maintaining all of your evidence in accordance with the kind of standards that the court is going to expect, but that you don't have any cases that are compromised as a result. So to whatever extent, I'd love to talk to everybody individually, but to urge the police departments in your districts to move forward with accreditation in the event that they need financial assistance. It's not super expensive, but to whatever extent you guys can provide grants to your departments, I'm telling you, even the naysayers, when you go into this, even like the, some of the cops or police chiefs that have been around 20 or 30 years, they're like, I don't like change. And then when they go through the process, they say, wow, I wish we had done this a long time ago. What a better police department we have because we went through this process, working with the chiefs of police and working with all these other law enforcement associations. And I'm super excited. I'm just really proud of our department for having gotten that completed. Our Michigan Identity Theft Support Unit. Again, I established this 2 or 3 years ago. And what is this? Well, it essentially, for people who have had their identity compromised or stolen, and you all know lots of people who have had this happen to them, perhaps it has happened to you, what I tell people nowadays is identity theft is so prevalent that it's not a matter of if your identity is going to be stolen. It's when it's going to happen, and how do you prepare for it? So how do you minimize the risk for that happening, but also what do you do once you clicked on a link you weren't supposed to click on, or you had somebody contact you and say they were your bank or credit union, and you could swear it was your bank or credit union. Turns out it was a scammer, and you provided information to them. And now it's not just the $200 or $300 that you might have lost in that transaction. It's that you can't sleep at night because you don't know who's got your information and what they're going to do with it. That's where we come in with our Michigan Identity Theft support work. You contact our office, we set you up with a caseworker, and we go step by step by step to help navigate what's a really difficult process sometimes, to help people reestablish their good name. And, we've helped thousands of people in the state of Michigan with this. Please, please tell your constituents about this particular program. There's so many people, they don't know what to do. I mean, you get all those letters saying, hey, your information was hacked, whatever company it is, or whatever service provider, or Corewell Health, or whoever. You get those letters, and you don't know what to do about it. You just feel lost and helpless. But, you don't have to, because we have this unit in our office, and that's our job, is to help people navigate that process and to make sure that we're able to restore their identity, and so that you don't have somebody who's, taking out credit in their name, buying a vehicle in their name, God knows what else. So please make sure you're referring people to that. Okay, here's a new initiative that we put together last year that I'm super excited about, our Small Business Identity Theft Program. Small businesses, it is just so overwhelming. It's one thing when you have, some enormous Fortune 500 company and you can afford all the bells and whistles to keep your business safe, but a lot of times small businesses really struggle. They don't know what to do or how to do it or what best practices are. That is what this program is. And it's not just that small businesses can contact us if they believe that they have fallen victim for for a scam. I mean, we help them in all sorts of ways, but we're going around the state, and we are going to have presentation after presentation after presentation. And as I was talking to Rep. Bolin and Rep. Leitner about a few minutes ago, please, please, please contact our department and ask for a presentation. I will go anywhere in the state, or my staff will, to put this presentation on. We've tried to condense it to an hour. It's hard. There's a lot of information. But we've tried to really condense it to a lunchtime presentation so that all the businesses, the small businesses in your district can come and they can learn about best practices, and we have flyers, and we have all kinds of things to help them identify how to best protect their business from identity theft. It is happening more and more, and people are losing everything. Entire businesses, family-owned businesses that are just having to literally shut down because they've fallen victim to this. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So please have your constituents contact us, or just call Ashley and say, I want to have one of these presentations.
Contact AG Events.
Yes,
Not
okay.
me.
All right, or Ashley, whichever. And let us know, because we really want to come out to your district. We want to help small businesses in any way that we possibly can. All right, our special litigation unit, which again, sound like a broken record. I'm just so proud of our staff. They work so hard, and they do such an amazing job. And I just sort of want to review this unit, because I know a lot of people, they know the AG's office is involved somehow with these requests for rate increases by utilities, but they're not sure how that happens. They know that I trash talk DTE like every 5 minutes, but they don't know why. Well, because it's my job. It's literally my job by statute. So, we have statutory and common law authority to intervene in all utility rate-making cases that appear before the Public Service Commission. And so since taking office, we've doubled the number of cases that we've intervened in. And my philosophy on this is pretty simple. If a utility wants to raise their rates, then they should have to prove why. And we shouldn't just give them a pass and say, well, probably you need this rate increase. We can't just take them for their word. We have to hold them to their burden of proof. And so we intervene in these cases. We get experts to testify in regard to whatever it is that the utility is asking for. And we've had some great successes. And I know it feels like, our rates continue to rise. And that has happened, but not by nearly as much as they would have had we not been so aggressive in our intervention. So in 2023, we saved customers $117 million on a consumer energy electric rate increase. On a DTE case, we saved, just a single case, $254 million. We have cases where, the utility might be asking for a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% increase, and they end up with a 0.05% increase after we intervene in it. So since taking office, if you look at it as a whole, our department has saved $3 billion for ratepayers in Michigan if you look at what was requested versus what they ended up getting later. And so that's, just to break it down, for every $1 invested, the return is roughly $600 in savings for ratepayers. And we work very closely with other advocates across the state, trying to help reduce emissions and increase renewables, but also maintaining a very clear focus on affordability for folks. So, obviously I appreciate the legislature's continuing support, and we're grateful for the additional funding that we got last year that allowed us to increase the amount of work that we're doing. And that's allowing an additional $900,000 to be focused just on this important work and to reduce utility bills for everybody. And also, I should say, we're very involved in the integrated resource plans, the 5-year plans that consumers and DTE and all the utilities have to put together. And, we are doing our very best to make sure that these long-term plans really contemplate how it's going to impact the consumer, and also as a result of that, now DTE has to disclose all their political contributions. So either you will love me or hate me for that. I hope to do that for all of the utilities. I think all the utilities should be disclosing how much money they are giving politically, and for all other things too. Like whenever I see, an ad when I'm watching the Michigan game, and I'm like, hey, I don't have a choice. Why are you advertising to me? And how much money are you spending on that? And those are the kinds of things that we bring up during these hearings. Like, is this rate increase so you can do more advertising? So, it's really important to have these interventions and to do it as much as we possibly can and to be as aggressive as we possibly can. Our robocalling enforcement initiative was launched in November of 2019, and we were focusing on federal, state, and industry cooperation, but also consumer education and increased enforcement, and also some statutory updates. And we've really become a national leader in this area. And if you were to go through state by state by state, really, I think Michigan, again, has become a model for how other states handle robocalls. And if you have noticed fewer robocalls coming in now from 2019, you're welcome. I think our department has done an amazing job on this. I credit to our staff who have been really aggressive. We've gone up against a lot of these illegal robocalling shops, and we have shut down, what amounts to millions and millions of robocalls coming in to Michigan residents. 90% of those, fun fact, to my mom alone. So, but we've been really aggressive in this area, and we're one of the few states you can report a robocall to us, and we will investigate that robocall. And again, I think it's been very impactful in terms of reducing the number of calls, cutting down on these illegal operations. Most robocalls are illegal in nature, and just helping consumers around the state. Our human trafficking work, we have the commission, which is housed within our department, and that's the commission that generally, it's not just the education that we do around the state to let people know how to identify human trafficking when it's happening in your community. It's not always so easy to tell what the signs are for that, both labor trafficking and sex trafficking, which continue to be a significant problem. But we also help come up with important legislation that we pass on to you guys. And I know that there is some, Rep. Breen has some human trafficking bills. I know in the Senate, Senator Bayer has some that I think passed unanimously. What passes unanimously?
Out of committee.
Oh, out of committee, sorry. Okay, it's going to pass unanimous. I have high hopes that it's going to pass unanimously out of, all right, no, that's not as good. But when it gets to the board, I think it's going to pass unanimously there. This is just good policy, folks. It's just good policy. And at some point, I know that Rep. Breen will harass you, if she has not already, about her bills coming out of the House. But this all comes out of the commission and the recommendations that are made there. But we have something additional that we're doing in our department now, which is, our theory on this was, it's great to study human trafficking and to figure out best practices in how to reduce it, how to identify it. But wouldn't it also be great to have a special task force to investigate and prosecute those cases instead of just, reviewing like, how did this go wrong? And so we are in the process of putting together a task force with, partners at the local, state, federal level, and we've been in talks with the U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District, in the Western District, with the FBI, with Homeland Security, and we are putting together, I think, what is going to be a very, very impactful task force. We have a new head of the task force who is a longtime prosecutor, was Prosecutor McComb before that, prosecutor in Wayne, highly respected around the state. She already has just since she took over, a number of new human trafficking cases that she's pursuing, many of which, for a long time were just overlooked, or it was thought that they were too hard, because they're very difficult cases to prosecute. But we are moving forward, and we plan to be as aggressive as we possibly can be on this front. Please remember to share with local law enforcement when you talk to them, and with your county prosecutors to work with us on any cases that they identify. And again, we can take the case, we can handle the case, or we can work side by side and just assist your county prosecutors in these cases. They are difficult. There's no question about it. We want to be as much assistance as we possibly can. Where are we at now? Oh, opioid enforcement. Again, super proud of the work that my department has done to negotiate these settlements. And, so far, since I took office, $1.6 billion in settlements. I'm very, very proud of the Walgreens case that we filed in 2020. And we ended up with $324 million. Okay, roughly. From that, but that's much better than any other state did in regard to the state's population, because we were very aggressive in pursuing that case. And so, we still have cases that are pending. We're not done with Purdue Pharma. You may have heard that case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, so we're waiting to see what happens in this. So we're not done. We're not done, but again, we have, the state of Michigan's already received $120 million. Local governments have received over $82 million. This is going to go on for long after probably any of us are still here, because, every year these payments are going to continue to be made to both the state of Michigan and to the many municipalities around the state. And the money is being spent really well. And I hope that you guys have noticed it in your own communities, that this money is coming in. So we continue to be aggressive. We continue to work hard on the distribution process and to make sure that we're bringing as much money in as possible to tackle the challenges of the opioid epidemic, both in terms of treatment but also prevention. Our consumer protection work, the crown jewel, obviously, of our office that I'm so proud of, but we launched a new website. And we decided to go with that owl as our moniker. What's the name of the owl? We had a naming competition. Does no one remember the name of the owl?
I don't know if we announced the winner.
Oh, maybe we haven't announced the name of the owl yet. It was a big deal at the Department of Attorney General who got to name the owl. But anyway, I really, I know. Now I feel terrible. Somebody text Harmony for the name of the. No, will you text Harmony? Because this is obviously the most important part of this presentation, is the name of the owl, and I know you guys are all on pins and needles. Right, so let's get that information. I know it's not Owly, because did I suggest that? That was terrible. Barney the Owl. Yeah, sure, why not? Anyway, please take a look at our website when you have a chance. We have tried to, we did a lot of studying, like how do we get, our website was just boring. It had great information on it. But it just, how do you compete with everything on YouTube and all the rest? So we really wanted people to be able to, when they have a question, like, is this a scam? Or how do I protect myself? To be able to go to our website and just very easily be able to watch a video or to be able to read some content in the, I guess the easiest manner to digest, so that people could understand it. And so we put a lot of work into this, and props to my, my IT people and our, graphic design people for putting together, I think, a really great site. Please remember to let your constituents know about it. So when they have these questions, the first thing they can call our office, but really our website might answer all of their questions very easily. So I really urge you to take a look at that. And our consumer protection team, by the way, continues to do an amazing job. And, all of their many investigations. And what I find to be the case much of the time, by the way, and this is another reason why, whenever there is a scam or price gouging or something of that nature, I know yes, you should contact local law enforcement, but they're just not equipped to handle many of these cases. Please have them call us at the Department of Attorney General. We will investigate their case, and you would be surprised the number of times all it takes is a single phone call or letter from your friendly assistant AG saying, hey, I think you owe these folks money, and rather than go through what could be a very difficult, costly investigation, and in some cases a criminal prosecution, you'd be surprised at how quickly sometimes your constituents will just get their money back in a very short period of time. So very proud of the work that they do, and that division continues to be great work. Our SACI initiative, the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, the numbers really speak for themselves, but you know, this appropriation that we initially received in 2022 was just so incredibly helpful, and you can look there in terms of the, you know, our 6 counties that we partner with, the massive number of investigations, prosecutions, and convictions. You would be shocked and horrified to know how many folks were serial rapists, but they were apprehended through this process, and you know, every conviction represents probably 1, 2, 3, 5, sometimes 10 victims that were never made into victims at all because we were able to identify them through this Sexual Assault Kit Initiative. And I'm so proud of the investigators and the prosecutors. You know, these are the hardest kinds of cases, I would say, as a longtime prosecutor, of all. Cold case sexual assaults are harder than any other kind of case. But these folks have really knocked it out of the ballpark, and I think they're making communities all over the state so much safer. I'm really proud of their work. I talked a little before about our clergy abuse investigation. Again, you know, 1.5 million paper documents and 3.5 million digital documents reviewed. We've now completed our review. And we put up a hotline. Over 1,000 people contacted us, and we investigated every single solitary complaint that was made. And sometimes, by the way, sometimes people didn't want to move forward with cases, but they just needed help. We have all these victim advocates that assist, and even if you don't want to go through the criminal justice system, maybe you just need help, and we provide that help to people. So our investigation with the 7 dioceses that we investigated, that yielded 112 police investigations. We identified 454 abusive clergy members and 811 victims of abuse. 242 cases were reviewed for criminal prosecution. Now, remember, these are old cases, and many of them were barred by the statute of limitations. But for these survivors, just knowing that the case was investigated properly and fully, and that there was a determination made, whether we could proceed or not, whether they wanted to proceed or not, was really impactful. We charged 11 defendants. We convicted, we have 9 of those individuals were convicted. The other 2, one passed away, and the other is still waiting for extradition from India. So, you know, massively successful. We had a lot of volunteers in our office who worked a lot of unpaid time because of how, you know, the extensive amount of materials here. But the thing that I think I'm as proud of as anything is the reports that we've issued going through every single solitary case where we identified a perpetrator and a victim. So those reports were completed, and they were already published on the Marquette and Gaylord Diocese. And we have, as you can see coming up, Kalamazoo, Lansing, Grand Rapids, Saginaw, Detroit. And so, you know, this provides a kind of closure for people that they never had before, and for their families. And I think there's nothing worse, really, than someone who's made a report of a sexual assault and just no one ever did anything. And this is a way for us to say to survivors, we care, and we are going to fully investigate any claim that was made, whether it was made, you know, recently or whether it was made 30 years ago and nobody did anything about it. We're going to fully investigate these cases, and we are going to help to bring closure. And I think we've done just that. Our Elder Abuse Task Force, which we established in 2019. If you guys haven't met Scott Teeter, then you're really missing out, because this is a guy who knows as much about elder abuse and neglect and exploitation as anybody in the state. And we're really, really working hard to minimize the incidences of abuse. As you know, our state is rapidly aging. We need to protect people all we can. So we've done a number of different things, whether it's our reporting form, our investigation form that's now used as a result of this task force by every single law enforcement agency in the state. We do online trainings and we do in-person trainings to law enforcement all over the state just on elder abuse. And we work in concert with county prosecutors and with county sheriffs and local police departments to assist them on these cases, and many, many, many cases of financial exploitation of seniors, unsurprisingly. You guys who were here in 2021, you passed the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act, which is helping seniors all over the state not lose their life savings. And shortly after, I tell the story oftentimes that it was maybe within 2 weeks of this becoming law in 2021 that my mom fell victim to a scam, and somebody said that they were with Apple and they needed her information. And why she didn't call me, I don't know, because I'm like, Mom, I'm the Attorney General. Maybe you should call me if that happens to you. And then she's like, oh, I don't want to bother you because, you're so busy. And I'm like, why do you have to make me feel guilty all the time? But anyway, that aside, so within 20 minutes of her providing my parents' bank account information to somebody she thought was with Apple, they tried to transfer all the money out of my parents' savings account. My parents are both octogenarians. And because of this law, the transaction didn't go through, and instead it was submitted to APS and law enforcement. They put a hold on the transaction. They were contacted so that they could say, no, we did not, approve of that transaction. And now, as I always say, I feel like from your good work, those of you who helped to pass that bill, you prevented homicides. Because if my parents would have had to move in with me, just not sure how that whole thing would have gone down. But I'm saying there are seniors all over the state that have been protected because of that one law alone that you guys passed. So bravo to you who have been here, who were there in 2021 and passed that. We got so much more where that came from, and we have obviously an entire package that you guys passed. Thank you, everyone who voted yes on our guardianship package. It's now pending in the Senate. And now it's just up to me to really irritate the Senate about getting those through. But when they do, I'm not going to say if, when they do, those will be changes that have been recommended for over 30 years that will be life-changing for seniors all around the state. And no time like the present, because I ain't getting any younger. And, if we could get this stuff passed after 30 years of recommendations would be amazing. But we really appreciate the work that you guys have all done with our department to get these very important, very bipartisan, I would argue, nonpartisan bills through. And they're continuing to work. Again, it's over 50 senior advocacy organizations, over 100 people, and they're doing some amazing stuff. Our PFAS accountability work, cases filed against chemical manufacturers and polluters all over the state. Litigation takes a very long time, but we've gotten a couple of these that were already settled. The Asahi Cassie Plastics North American settlement that was out of Livingston County. And we have a few other cases. Obviously, you remember the Wolverine Worldwide case that we settled out in Kent County. While I can't get into any details, we have ongoing negotiations with some of these chemical manufacturers that I think are going to bring in a significant amount of money into the state of Michigan. It'll be distributed to help clean up widespread PFAS contamination. Chair Brebeck, my gosh, you got some stuff going on in your district right now that, is incredibly scary. As I have said many times, these guys, they made the mess. They should pay to clean it up. And that's what we're trying our hardest to do, and it is my goal to get as many of these cases settled as possible before my time in office is done. Child support enforcement. It's a great program started under AG Cox that has continued. I'm really proud of the work of our staff. Just in the last year, 45,000 cases generated. We collected over $24 million in child support, and that's money that, again, you know, the state doesn't have to pay to help support these children. Their parents or guardians should be paying that money, right? And so, you know, again, these were parents that had absconded, you know, or shirked their obligations under the law. We were able to enforce those cases, and now that money's being collected and spent on those children, which is badly needed. Our hate crimes and domestic terrorism unit, which I created in 2019, you know, I'm sure it has not escaped anybody's attention that there's just a lot of threats against, first of all, members of minority communities, but also just against public officials in general. And while we have prosecuted some pretty high-level cases, you know, the Wolverine Watchman and the Base cases are a couple. You probably haven't heard too much about the Base case. That was a scary case. We charged a number of individuals with domestic terrorism. These were folks that were you know, had manuals and uniforms, and they were using an MDOC closed-down outpost to train, and their goal was to kill as many people as possible. And instead, they're taking a timeout right now, taking a little timeout in the Michigan Department of Corrections, and we were able to convict everybody on that matter. And I think prevent, you know, an untold number of homicides on that case. But I'm also really proud in terms of the domestic terrorism front, the number of cases that we've charged and convicted for threats against elected officials. And I'm not just talking about the governor. I mean state reps and senators. I mean sheriffs, judges, prosecutors, folks who work for a local health department or on a school board. I mean, I think that we should all agree we can all have our different opinions on things, and people have a right to express themselves through the First Amendment. But you know what they can't do? They can't threaten to kill you and your families. That's a crime, and when people cross over the line and engage in terroristic activity, we're going to charge them, we're going to prosecute them, we're going to hold them accountable. And I don't know how we have just you know, a civil society with a well-run government if everybody's afraid for their lives all the time. And so we've been really active in that space and very successful. Some of our other specialized units, our public integrity unit, where we have 104 pending cases. These are incidences where a public official has breached the public trust or stolen taxpayer dollars. We also include in that our investigations into in-custody deaths and police officer-involved shootings. And why is that so important? Well, not just so that people know that their public officials and their law enforcement officers are acting within the realm of the law, but also because oftentimes county prosecutors can't handle these cases because they're conflicted out, because it involves somebody in, could be a county commissioner, or it could be a police chief, or it could be somebody that they have contact with, so they have to conflict themselves out. They send it to our department, and we handle that department. Sometimes the county prosecutor can't handle it because the person who committed the crime is the county prosecutor. And as you know, we brought charges against Eric Smith, and within days after that, he resigned, which I think was the very best thing we could have done for Macomb County. But no offense, Denise. Yeah, right. So anyway, moving right along. But honestly, when we have cases like that, there's just nothing more important than making sure that people have faith in their government. And I'm really proud of the work that our seasoned special agents and prosecutors have done in that field. We also have a payroll fraud enforcement unit. Again, if you have somebody who has been misclassified, they should be getting the benefits of an employee, but instead they're given a 1099 and told that they're an independent contractor, and they're not really. Or you've seen this before, a business shuts down and they decide just not to pay everyone their last check. Please let us know. Again, oftentimes it's just a single friendly call from our department that gets that money to the person that it is deserving of it, or that they're reclassified properly. We got a lot of other stuff, but I know that, like, I've taken up a lot of your time, and these are just the highlighting of some of the work that we're doing at the department. And you know what I got this yesterday from somebody at an event who I did a senior scam event with Rep. McFall, and I had somebody approach me and say, you know what, I don't care for you, but I love the work of your department. And I said, thank you. But why do I say that? Because you know what, irrespective, you can like my policies, dislike my policies. My staff does excellent work. These are just dedicated civil servants, many of whom have served now through 5 attorneys general, and just continue to provide excellent service to the state of Michigan and to the people of the state of Michigan. And irrespective of whose name is on the letterhead, really proud of the folks that work at the Department of Attorney General. So thank you.
Attorney General, thank you so much. It truly is remarkable. I mean, the breadth and depth of what you and your team does is, I think, oftentimes can go unnoticed by our residents because it just is so present, ever present, and we can easily take that for granted. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. So we have several questions from folks. So Rep. Mentzer, we'll start with you.
And this is kind of a tongue. Thank you, Chair. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek question. I see here in your budget, your projected budget, a 25% reduction in the general fund. Overall, a $14.2 million, reduction. So, this is an election year. I just wanted to know: did you double the money in the public integrity unit?
Do you want to answer that question, or do you want Danielle to answer that question?
Double the money in the public integrity unit? So the general fund that you saw is from the one-time funding. And so $20 million for the FY25 budget that we got from last year isn't going to be there. So really our budget this year is just going to be a continuation budget. So some of the associated like payroll adjustments and everything like that gets you to where we're going to have that like net 14 million, what you said, reduction is just because we backed out of that $20 million in one-time funding.
But feel free to give us more money. I mean, like that's the, if you,
executive
right.
recommendation.
But if you wanted to do more, like that would be fine and no one would be upset.
Well, I think in an election year, that one unit would need more money.
Minority Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Attorney General Nessel. I always welcome your presentation. I love your humor and also your straightforwardness. And you are doing great work in your office. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rob.
Very much. I do have a couple of questions, just one at a time, or can I maybe go on? So specifically as it relates, no, not forever. They're just 3 different topics. 4. The Address Confidentiality Program.
Yes.
I just wonder how you're coordinating with the Bureau of Elections, training our local clerks, the interface with the QVF, and how that's working.
Sure. So our coordinator, I know, has been in very, very, very close contact with all the folks that you just talked about. I know that there have been trainings that she has performed. Her name is Karen Hall, victim advocate, and she is amazing. The work that she's done to put this together. There's a hotline also that I know they've utilized, and we wanted, to, because this is brand new, we wanted to make sure that, of course, there's no issues in terms of people going to the polls and providing this, alternative address. It's not, of course, their real address. And to ensure that they weren't being turned away by clerks. And so we have, sort of a hotline number that we use so that the clerks can call over and say, hey, I'm not familiar with this. Can you explain this to me? And I know that we've done separate trainings involving this specifically. I have not learned of even one instance where you've had a voter turned away at this point. But Danielle, is there anything else that you want to say about this? Danielle oversees the program.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Rep. Olin is one of your constituents. It's always nice to be able to interface. In terms of the address confidentiality, when they built the program, they worked directly with MDOS to ensure that there would be a smooth transition for folks who are getting a protected address and still being able to vote at the polls. They've worked closely with the Board of Elections to ensure that process, and to date, we have not had any concerns expressed by a single clerk.
I don't think that we would, because this is really going to be our first test run here.
Today, yep.
But I am concerned because our local clerks, they literally got the primary election early voting electronic poll book 2 days before early voting started. And so I just want to make sure, as a former clerk, that our local clerks are getting directly. A lot of stuff was coming at them from the Bureau, last minute, late, a lot for them to go off. I just want to make sure that all of our local clerks are aware and do whatever we can to make sure they are properly outfitted. They are the ones that are actually going to be working with this and running this. And, until they test run it, I think the Bureau can do all the work, but it really is the boots on the grounds that are going to make the difference.
In preparation for every election, I'm sure you know that our department works closely with being available on the day of if there are any questions, and certainly our ACP folks are available as well to be able to help facilitate those issues. They've worked very closely with the advocates, who I think are probably our victims themselves' first line of contact. So if there is an issue, they have that direct contact immediately to be able to help figure out the issue. Because I do think those open lines of communications are so important.
I just would not want to see a voter have to show up and, even when you're pulled aside and trying to figure it out, that's the whole purpose, was to avoid that, right?
Absolutely.
Make sure that didn't happen.
Yep.
So along the lines of elections, I'm curious on I know after last year I had some staff from the AG's office come in and particularly like to know what the standing is, and the number of complaints that have been filed about harassment to election administrators and against election officials and admins, and then how many have been, came to fruition and pursuant, what's the timing, what's the process? I don't know if you're prepared to answer that, but.
Sure. Daniel, do you happen to have that information?
I know that we've charged 36 cases of threats. I can tell you, I have not seen one that we've charged against a clerk. I'm not sure that the cases, I used to see them every day when they came in as a former division chief for our criminal trial and appeals division. I don't see them every day until they make their way to me for an actual charging decision. And honestly, I have not seen one that has risen to the level of being charged to date. Now, having said that, we have specialized prosecutors that are very familiar with the First Amendment concerns, as well as the nature of a true threat. There are some cases we can prosecute and some cases that we can't, but we review all the ones that get sent to us. I have not seen one make its way specifically to us where a victim has been an actual clerk or somebody involved in the voting process.
Okay, so not against election officials.
Correct.
Okay.
I will say that we do coordinate, though, with the county prosecutors and help to provide advice to them when they have First Amendment-related, concerns, and does this fit within the realm? We had a recent decision at the United States Supreme Court, the Counterman decision, which really changed, I would say significantly, or at least in some ways, the cases that can and cannot be charged, or at least the presentation of, what witnesses have to be called in a case even. So we've really worked hard with the county prosecutors that they can handle their own election-related threat cases, but with a little bit of our expertise. And I will say, while I have not been asked another question about it, I do want to revisit real quickly. So we have not picked a name of the owl yet, but so I'm open to any suggestions. So far, we're at Owly, Hootie, Otto, Athena. Where does that come from? Alec, Frank, after, of course, the Attorney General. I'm sure that Frank Kelly, there's no better way that he would feel honored than to know that we might be naming the Consumer Protection Owl after him. Hoot and Minerva. What's that? Okay, but if you have any suggestions, we are totally open to that. So please know you can send us that information, and we'll put that into however we decide to name the owl. But
Thank you, and
Yes.
I'll reserve my others. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Minority Vice Chair. Rep. Puri.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, AG, for your insightful presentation today. I do want to take a second and thank you for your work and your team's work. I think I share the sentiment of most of my colleagues that it's great to see someone driven in a people-first approach at the reins of the Attorney General's office. Your team does great work, tackles a wide breadth of issues, as we've seen here, while always putting the people of Michigan first. So thank you for that. And despite your views and comments on my beard, the partnership with you and your team has been appreciated. It's great seeing the work that your team's been doing on, exonerations all over the state, and just everything we went through in the presentation. I know firsthand our office had the ability to coordinate with you on the institutional desecration legislation we worked on, some common sense gun reform, and we didn't work on it, but thank you for keeping our Lululemons safe as well. It's important stuff. But in your presentation, we went over the wide breadth of things that your office covers, and there's a whole host of initiatives. I want to narrow in a little bit on the human trafficking piece. That's a devastating problem that's still very much plaguing our state, our country. Can you speak a little bit to how the proposed budget can advance efforts in combating that? And then also spend just a moment on your thoughts on human trafficking courts in the state of Michigan.
I think I'm going to let Danielle handle this because she's overseeing all that. Yeah. Go ahead, Danielle.
I think I would echo the AG sentiments. Any additional money you want to send our way, we certainly are not going to turn down. At this point, we have one full-time human trafficking person. And when I say full-time, I mean it's probably about 75% of the work that she does. Melissa is also our child abuse expert, as well as our child sexual abuse expert when it comes to prosecutions at the department. She's recently been made the co-chair of the Human Trafficking Commission and is really focusing her efforts on re-energizing that group to continue the work in terms of legislative proposals, but then also being the go-to one-stop shop for all information related to human trafficking, particularly as it relates to our website. I think the AG talked about how our website in some ways is very boring and can't compete. We are attempting to update that human trafficking piece of the website so that folks who are your constituents, for our law enforcement partners, for our advocacy partners, when they are looking for training and resources and an ability to connect with other professionals in this field, can find them right there at our website. As the AG said, there are 9 new investigations. I think what we have found is that as we got further away from the actual casework, the less cases were coming into our office. And so Melissa and I had the opportunity to attend a human trafficking conference back in September that DHHS put on. And what we heard was that nationally, only 6 prosecutions of labor trafficking occurred in the previous year across our entire country. 6 for our entire country. We have 2 cases that we're looking at that I don't want to spill the beans unnecessarily, but we are moving toward prosecution, and hopefully we'll be able to share those results of those announcements with you all soon. Because really, the focus, I believe, at least in the 23 years that I've been doing criminal prosecution, has been on sex trafficking. It's what we see and what we think of, I think, portrayed in the media most frequently, and yet labor trafficking does permeate our communities in ways that we certainly have not recognized in the criminal justice system. And so the efforts in our department will continue to be around sex human trafficking, but also with a renewed focus on labor trafficking to start making inroads in those areas, because it simply is not an area where our criminal justice system has had and seen much success. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you for the insight. I do have some more questions. I'll take them offline, but I do want to speak more about just how our chamber can be a better partner on this issue. And thank you for your work.
Well, and let me say that for our organized retail crime unit, we stole Canton's best and brightest, who had some amazing expertise in that, and working, in concert with your district has been phenomenally successful. Can I just go back to your human trafficking question, though? These bills that I discussed earlier, when we talk about why there are so few cases of human trafficking that ultimately are prosecuted, it's because we don't have enough protections for human trafficking survivors. And that's what those bills are about, providing the protections they need so that they feel comfortable testifying against their abusers. That is primarily what those bills aim to do. And so if we can get this legislation through, I think that is going to aid us in our ability to actually pursue these cases because victims and survivors will feel protected.
Representative Leitner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Attorney General. Always good to see you.
Nice to see you.
I have a question in regards to Jobs Court. Obviously, it's a newer program that you have under your office, and with it being only in 3 counties, I'm just curious, kind of like the successes of it over the last year. And I know that in your presentation, you also mentioned that you have some neighboring counties, but it's technically a pilot still. But I'm just wondering if you can talk to me a little bit about the successes and then some of the wraparound services on like how it actually works and people are successful in the court, like what service it provides other than a job. I think we may have talked about transportation. Can you just give me a quick nitty-gritty on it?
Sure. So we do provide full wraparound services, and oftentimes that's the biggest challenge for a person who wants to maintain steady employment but can't. Sometimes there are housing insecure or food insecure. Transportation is a huge issue. Sometimes there are people who are, having, issues finding childcare. That's a substantial issue, and I'm sure you've all heard about that from your constituents. And there are folks, obviously, still that are having mental health or substance abuse issues that require treatment as well. So we provide all of those wraparound services. Our goal is this. We want to get you the training that you need for whatever the job is that you're seeking, and we have a wide array of them. And again, these aren't jobs; these are careers, many of them. And we've partnered with so many different organizations, and we've partnered with many of the unions. And again, I look at the salaries that within just a few short years, some of these individuals will make if they stick with these programs. And I'm like, why did I run for Attorney General when I could have one of those jobs? Because, these are going to be highly paid jobs with full benefits. So the goal for us is if we can just get them through this time period where they have all of these challenges, they will have far fewer of those challenges in many cases once they've had full-time employment for an entire year. And of course, also, they won't have a criminal record, which will assist them as well, or at least not for that particular offense. So far, as I indicated, it's working really well. We've only had a few people who have not made it in the program and have had to drop out.
What's the average length of time for a jobs court?
It's
like
a one,
that you're in. It's a full year.
So it's a full year that a person has to stay employed through the program. And again, we have a wide variety of types of jobs. And I know if somebody said to me, hey, you have to be a utility worker, I'd be like, no, thank you. I am not going up in that basket. I can't do that job. But so we have a number of different types of careers, and people get to decide what's best suited for them. And the other thing that we want to do is if they say, hey, listen, this is just not for me, this career, and I think I need to try something else, then we work with them. We don't kick them out of the program and be like, nope, you have to stay in that job for a whole year. We try to assist them to find what's right for them as long as we know that they are actually trying and they're showing up for work and they are, their employer is generally happy with their performance. Like I said, our first year will be done with our first applicants and participants in September? Okay, in the fall. So we'll have our first graduations, and we're keeping, obviously, statistics is a huge part of this. So of course we're keeping stats on everybody, and we feel like this is going to be a phenomenally successful program. But I guess we just won't know statistically how successful until we have gone through the 2 years of the appropriation to see how it worked out for folks who have entered the program, and also why people have left the program in the event that they do.
Representative Kuhn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Attorney General, for being here today. Appreciate the fact that you've brought all this money in on opioid enforcement, and I know your department is integrally involved in the allocation to local governments of the 82 million. I was wondering, how is your office monitoring the local community's use of opioid settlement funds for appropriateness, and are there recovery measures if funds are misused?
Sure. So I'm glad you brought that up, Representative. So this was an interesting issue that we had to navigate in terms of the settlement and the distribution, because the way the settlement worked was the more subdivisions or municipalities that participated, the more money that would come into the state. So if we had municipalities that opted out, that was less money that we were going to get for the overall settlement. So we wanted to encourage as many municipalities as possible to participate. But then what a lot of municipalities said to us is, we're going to have to hire an entire additional staffer or several staffers if we're going to go through what can be a very extensive process in terms of like regular reporting procedures for the appropriations that they made. So, this was a difficult thing to navigate. We want folks to participate. We think that the locals oftentimes know better than the state how that money needs to be used. And I'll bet for each and every one of you, you all know programs that are in your districts that you're like, they're doing a great job, but they're a smaller nonprofit maybe. And for them to go through DHHS to get a grant, they might just be ineligible because they don't have a grant writer who works for them. And so we wanted to make sure we're getting as much money as possible to as many units of government as possible. But again, there's the reporting issue that a lot of these folks had. And a lot of the money, what we saw was that for some communities, based on the amount of money they were getting, if they had to hire an entirely new person just to do all of the reporting features that we require of some other types of settlements, it would eat up all the money. Like, you'd be spending all the money just on that person. So we had to sort of weigh and balance those things. And so what we do is we communicate with all of the municipalities, and we are involved in terms of tracking the money, whether it's through the FOIA process, whether it's through community stakeholders that are helping to track the money. At this point, I will tell you, I have not had one complaint, not one, that any money has been misappropriated from the settlement money that has been distributed. Will that happen at some point? I guess, like all government appropriations, it is always possible, but here's what happens. In the event that the money is misspent, it's over for that municipality. They get not even $1 more in funding. So that's pretty big price to pay in the event that any of that money is misappropriated. And remember, some of these settlements are 18 years of settlement money coming in. So you use that money incorrectly, even one time, you don't get any more of that money. And that money will be distributed differently as a result of that. So we're doing our best to keep track of that, but understanding that all of these communities would have gotten substantially less money if we did not incentivize it by saying, these really strict reporting requirements are not going to be required under the settlement. So I hope that answers your question, but we are keeping track of it the best that we can. And again, if we find anybody has misappropriated the money, then that community, unfortunately, will not receive any more of the settlement.
Thank you very much, and I'll submit the other questions in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. AG, one of the things that you talked about was you and your team's work around domestic terrorism, hate crimes. One of the things that we know is in 22, the Southern Poverty Law Center tracked activity on, I think, 29 distinct, anti-government or hate groups. And I'm wondering if, what I want to also say that Michigan's not alone. Right, this is not just something that's uniquely happening in Michigan. We know that it's happening not only in other states but around the world in terms of these sentiments. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what you're doing, and then similar to what Rep. Puri asked, what are ways that we can partner in the legislature to be able to give you the tools that you need as we're seeing this rise in extremism?
I am so glad that you asked that question, Chair Brebeck. I got a lot to say. First of all, when you ask yourself, are these crimes actually happening, right? Is this a figment of our imagination, or is this really occurring? It's not just the FBI and MSP stats, but this is an example that should sort of alert your attention as to the significant number of hate crime incidents. So in 2019, I created this particular division in the office. I was called to testify before a Senate committee that was chaired by, at that time, Senator McBroom. And I will, for lack of a better term, I was grilled about this. Are there really this many hate crimes? And what even is a hate crime? And really, I think the suggestion was that our current statute, which is honestly very lame, the Ethnic Intimidation Act, was a 2-year offense, that I shouldn't be prosecuting it at all, even though, this is not a partisan statute. John Engler was a co-sponsor of it, so was Connie Binsfield. At one time, we didn't look at hate crimes as being partisan in any way. Anyway, so then Senator Pete Lucido really came after me about the need for having this unit. Well, flash forward to 2024, and now Macomb County Prosecutor Pete Lucido has a hate crimes unit that he established at the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office because there are so many hate crimes in Macomb County. So I don't know if that tells you anything about whether hate crimes are really occurring or not. I would welcome you to ask Prosecutor Lucido why he established his own hate crimes unit. So I guess we'll start with that in terms of the the significant number of cases out there. Okay. Anyway, so in terms of what you guys could be better doing to assist us, and I come to you just practically begging for this. We need to update our state's hate crimes laws, please. We need to do the things that many of you voted on, and it passed the first time, and then now we have bills that are in the Senate, and then there are, I guess, separate bills that are coming up in the House again. First of all, a 2-year offense. If I can put this in context, if somebody were to open your unlocked car door and steal a pen, that is a 5-year offense technically. Doesn't mean you're going to go to prison for 5 years. Just means you could. If someone came into your office building and stole a pen, that's a 10-year offense. If somebody came into your home and stole a pen, that's a 15-year offense. Are you kind of getting my gist here? It's a 2-year offense, the Ethnic Intimidation Act. And so what does that mean, having this be such a low-level offense? First of all, of course, the way that it's written now, we leave out a lot of important classes. We leave out age. A lot of people are targeted because they're very young or very old. And I'm sorry, but if you are targeting a person based on their age, that's still a hate crime. If you're targeting just seniors because you think you can take advantage of them, disability, not included. Do you know how many people are being taken advantage of or specifically targeted because they have a disability, whether that's a mental disability or a physical disability? It's a lot of people, but they're not included. And obviously sexual orientation and gender identity are not included. And there's a whole lot of LGBTQ people that get targeted for hate crimes just based on being a member of a suspect class. But in addition to that, what does it mean when you have something that is a 2-year, it's very vague whether that even constitutes a felony versus a misdemeanor. What does that mean? Well, firstly, you can't habitualize a 2-year. So if you commit the crime over and over and over again, you don't get to, that person's never going to become a HAB 2, HAB 3, HAB 4. You can't add a felony firearm. That's a pretty big deal. I'm sorry, if you get attacked by somebody and they have a weapon on them, the fact that you can't add a felony firearm in that instance is really, really deeply concerning. It shortens the amount of time that a person has to be made competent if they have mental health issues. And, you know, in terms of a person violating, and I know that a lot of us, you know, are interested in criminal justice reform and people, you know, spending less time in jail and prison. And I think, if anything, you've seen through our expungement program, through our job program, like, we want people, ideally, to not go to jail or prison if they can safely be returned to their communities and not be threatening people and not be building up to what in many cases ultimately ends up as a homicide. We know that these homicides that are bias-oriented, that they are racially motivated, or they're gender motivated, or they're based on a person's religion or race or ethnicity, they don't start off as homicides. They start off here as hate crimes, as lower level either property-related offenses or physical assaults that are not murder cases. And by having a greater potential penalty, it doesn't mean that person is definitely going to jail or definitely going to prison, but I don't know the second or third or fourth time that they violate. I mean, I've had people who have threatened my life and my family's life only for them to violate by amassing a cache of assault weapons and enough ammo to kill everyone in each one of your districts. And then what's the most that they can do? Well, I guess it would be 2 years. And sometimes that's a very dangerous person who doesn't deserve to be out there because they are a threat to your communities. And so I'm just personally offended by the 2 years. The fact that, like I said, I mean, a bad check, 14 years. You physically assault somebody based on, again, any of them, those suspect class related, bias-oriented reasons, and we treat it like it's a traffic offense. I mean, it's dangerous. And sometimes we need to make sure that people are removed from civil society so that they don't kill people. And I think it's important that we take a good look at these proposed hate crime laws, and that we are supportive of these laws, and that we do everything we can to protect people. The proposed laws, there is embedded in these laws the possibility that judges, if the person fits the right criteria, and we think that, listen, this person made a mistake, they can be rehabilitated, we just want to make sure that they're getting some help and some treatment, they allow for that. But also, sometimes people have to have the threat of actually going to jail or prison over their heads so that they don't commit further crimes. And I am deeply afraid of not amending these laws to update them, given the exponential rise in these types of crimes, all over the state of Michigan. And I think it's time that we started to take hate crime seriously in this state.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, AG. I know there are other questions that folks have. We will get them to you. Ashley, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to your entire team for taking time to spend with us this morning. Again, we're grateful for your work and your leadership on so many important issues, and we look forward to crafting this budget with you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your partnership and appreciate your hard work and devotion to the people of the state of Michigan.
Thank you. All right, folks, any other business before us? All right. Well, we are adjourned with no further business. We will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.